A single negative thought can quietly ruin a day that seemed completely normal. You wake up, and nothing terrible has happened, yet one small thought slips into your mind. Maybe today I will fail. Maybe nothing will go the way I hope. From that moment on, something inside you begins to shift. Your joy starts fading, your confidence shrinks, your peace slowly disappears. And the frightening part is that no one can see the storm, because it is happening entirely inside your mind, before life on the outside has even touched you. Many people think life falls apart because of major disasters, but so often everything begins with one small fearful question. What if I am not good enough? What if I lose everything? A question that seems harmless can open the door to wave after wave of doubt. In a very short time, the mind that was meant to hold peace becomes a battlefield that never seems to rest. The greatest battle in the spiritual life of many people is not happening out in society, at work, or in relationships. It is happening inside their own mind, in the moments no one else can see, when they are trying to fight off exhaustion, fear, and relentless negative thoughts. Sometimes you are still smiling, still working, still showing up as if everything is fine, while inside you are completely worn out from fighting your own thoughts. If you have ever lived through that kind of silent struggle, then you already know how real this battle is. Thoughts never stay only as thoughts. They create emotions, emotions shape actions, and repeated actions eventually shape a person's life. Someone who constantly thinks they have no value will slowly begin to live as if they truly are unworthy. Someone who always expects the worst will live guarded, tense, and unable to rest. In the end, thoughts become the unseen writer of the story a person is living. That is why Scripture gives such importance to the mind. God does not only want to change outward behavior, habits, or words. He wants to touch the deepest place, the way a person thinks. Because if the mind does not change, life may look different for a moment, but it will soon fall back into the same old pattern. Many people try to fix their actions without touching the root, and that is why they keep repeating the same cycle of fear, disappointment, and exhaustion. Biblical positive thinking is not pretending everything is fine, and it is not deceiving yourself with pleasant words. It is the decision to trust the truth of God even when your feelings are fighting against you. You may feel weak, but you still choose to hold on to what God has spoken. You may not see the way out yet, but you still believe He is working. That is not denial. That is faith, refusing to bow to fear. Romans 12:2 reveals a powerful principle. Life truly begins to change direction when the mind is renewed. Many people pray for a new life, a new opportunity, a new future, while still clinging to the same old thoughts filled with limitation, doubt, and fear. As a result, they long for change but keep walking in the same direction. God knows that if the mind is still being pulled backward by fear, it will be very difficult for a person to step into the new thing He has prepared. A believer cannot afford to be passive with their thoughts. Not every thought that appears should be accepted, kept, and allowed to grow. Some thoughts come only to weaken you, discourage you, and pull you away from the peace of God. If you are not alert, you may start assuming that everything that crosses your mind must be true. But spiritual maturity means learning to pause, examine, and reject what does not come from the truth of God. One of the most dangerous mistakes is believing that every voice inside your mind can be trusted. In reality, some thoughts are only echoes of old wounds, long seasons of disappointment, buried fear, or harsh words you have carried for years. If you accept all of them without discernment, you will slowly live under the influence of things that do not reflect truth at all. And before long, you may be fighting battles that were never meant to define you. Negative thinking rarely arrives loudly. It comes quietly, little by little, until you no longer realize you have become used to expecting something bad. You begin to doubt good things, worry before anything even happens, and live as though peace is something far away. Negativity does not only make you sad for a moment, it traps you inside a distorted way of seeing life, yourself, and the future. Proverbs 23:7 points to a truth that runs deep. As a person thinks in the heart, so that person slowly becomes. If every day you keep telling yourself that you are weak, hopeless, a failure, and unable to change, those thoughts will not remain still. They will cling to your emotions, shape your decisions, dim your ability to see possibility, and eventually become the person you are living as. This is why guarding the mind is not a small matter. It is deeply connected to the direction of your life. God calls us to focus on what is true, honorable, pure, lovely, and worthy of praise. That does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to let your mind feed constantly on bitterness, corruption, and despair. Your mind will always reflect what you nourish it with each day. If you fill it with darkness, fear, and confusion, peace will begin to fade. But if you fill it with truth, gratitude, and the presence of God, something inside you begins to heal. Faith and doubt are not only matters of emotion. They are deeply connected to the way a person thinks every single day. When the mind keeps circling around fearful questions, faith begins to weaken, often without that person even realizing it. They may still pray and still listen to sermons, but inwardly they have grown used to expecting bad news more than expecting God to move. On the other hand, when a person intentionally fills their mind with the promises of God, faith has room to grow. True peace does not begin only when circumstances finally become calm. Many people believe that if everything around them settles down, then their heart will settle too. But Scripture shows the opposite. Peace begins when the mind is held steady in trust before God. Even if the storm has not ended, even if the answer has not come, a person can still stand firm when their mind is no longer being dragged around by fear. Peace is not always the absence of trouble. Sometimes it is the presence of God in the middle of it. A very important part of renewing the mind is learning to replace lies with truth. The enemy rarely begins with something dramatic. More often, he whispers familiar sentences such as, "You are not enough," "You will never change," "No one really cares about you," or "God has forgotten you." If those lies are repeated long enough, they begin to sound like truth. But the truth of God is stronger than every lie. And when truth enters the place where fear has ruled for too long, chains begin to break. The words you speak every day carry more power than you realize. Your words do not only reflect what is happening in your mind, they also reinforce and strengthen the beliefs living inside you. If you constantly say that you are powerless, unlucky, hopeless, or never going to get better, you are cooperating with negativity and helping it darken your mind. But when you begin to speak in agreement with truth, the atmosphere inside you begins to change as well. Life and death truly are carried in the power of words. You cannot expect to have a healthy mind if you keep pouring toxic things into it every day. What you watch, what you listen to, the conversations you stay in, and the people you stay close to are shaping your thoughts more than you may realize. Some people pray for peace while living in a constant stream of fear, comparison, anger, and confusion. Then they wonder why their inner life feels heavy. A guarded mind is not a fearful mind. It is a wise mind. Gratitude is one of the strongest weapons against negativity. It does not immediately remove every problem, but it changes the way you look at the problem. When you become grateful, you stop looking only at what is missing, and begin remembering what God has already done, what He is still sustaining, and how He has never abandoned you. Gratitude interrupts the voice of complaint, and helps the heart remember that God has been faithful before, and will be faithful again. Positive thinking is not a formula that allows you to avoid pain, disappointment, or hard seasons. Believers still walk through exhaustion, confusion, and moments when all they can do is cling to faith. But the difference is that they do not let hardship speak the final word. They learn to believe that even in the hardest place, God is still working in ways their eyes cannot yet see. Right thinking does not remove the storm, but it keeps the storm from ruling the soul. Renewing the mind is not something that happens once and then ends. It is a daily journey, often quiet, often slow, but very real. Some days you feel strong, and other days the old thoughts return again. What matters is not that the struggle never comes back. What matters is that you do not surrender when it does. Every prayer, every verse of Scripture, every moment of worship is helping rebuild your mind day by day. And this is where many lives quietly begin to change. Not in one dramatic moment, not in a single sermon, a single prayer, or one powerful burst of emotion. Change often begins in the hidden places, in the small decisions no one applauds. It begins when a person notices the lie rising in their mind and refuses to agree with it this time. It begins when they are tired, yet still open the Bible. When they feel fear, yet still whisper the promises of God. When they do not feel strong, yet still choose not to surrender their mind to darkness. Little by little, something sacred begins to happen. The thoughts that once ruled them lose their power. The fears that once sounded convincing begin to weaken. The inner chaos that once felt normal starts to feel foreign. And the voice of truth, once faint and distant, becomes clearer, steadier, stronger. This is how renewal often looks. Quiet, repeated, deep. It is not always visible to others at first, but heaven sees it. God sees every small act of resistance, every moment you choose truth over fear, peace over panic, faith over despair, and over time those small hidden choices become the very path that leads a soul back into freedom. The prayer at the end is not just a beautiful way to close the message. It is a powerful spiritual act. It is the moment when a person stops making peace with fear, stops accepting anxiety as normal, and intentionally invites God into the most chaotic place in their mind. Some people have tried to overcome it by willpower alone and still failed, because this battle is not only psychological, it is also spiritual. And sometimes the breakthrough begins the moment a weary heart finally says, "God, I cannot do this alone anymore." The final comment should not feel like empty engagement. It should become a personal declaration, a decision spoken out in faith. When someone writes that they choose faith over fear, they are not simply leaving words under a video. They are publicly choosing to stand with faith instead of continuing to agree with the fear that has controlled them for far too long. Sometimes change begins with a sentence that is very short, but deeply real. And maybe today is the day you need to say it.